When Emily walked through the front door at exactly 1:32 a.m., she brought the cold with her. The quiet in the cabin had been total. No wind, no creaking wood, just the low hum of the fridge and the occasional crackle of the fireplace that was burning down to embers. I had been sitting there in the dark for hours, not doing anything, not watching TV, not reading, just sitting, waiting, listening. She didn't expect me to be awake. We were renting this house in the mountains outside Boulder. Supposed to be a quiet getaway, a chance for her to reconnect with her friends before her best friend's wedding next weekend. They'd booked this place months ago, and the way she talked about it made it sound like the most wholesome sleepover imaginable. Fruit platters, matching pajamas, old rom-coms, and group selfies. A girl's only thing, she said, with that smile she used when she wanted me to be okay with something. You'd be bored out of your mind, babe. We're literally just going to braid each other's hair and complain about our exes. She always joked like that, kept things light, disarming, so I didn't ask questions. Not at first. I kissed her goodbye Friday morning and told her to have fun. But sometime around 11 p.m., her location stopped updating. Her phone showed as offline, which it never did, not in all the years I'd known her. And my texts, they just sat there, read eventually but ignored. I didn't call. I didn't want to be that guy, the clingy husband, the insecure one. I trained myself not to overreact. Still, by midnight I was pacing, and when she finally walked in an hour and a half later, something in me was already bracing for a story. Emily closed the door softly behind her and kicked off her boots. "Hey babe," she said casually, like nothing was off. She tossed her denim jacket on the entry chair, let her hair out of its loose braid, and stretched like she'd just come from yoga. She smelled different. It hit me like static electricity, unexpected and sharp. Not her usual light floral perfume or the lavender body mist she always used before bed. This was deeper, earthier, smoky, a mix of cedarwood and musk and something faintly spicy. Not feminine, not her, and definitely not alone. She walked past me toward the kitchen, her phone still in her hand. I stayed quiet, watching her like I didn't know how to speak. "You're up late," she said, opening the fridge. "Couldn't sleep?" I shrugged. "Was waiting. For me." She gave a little laugh like the idea was cute. "You should have gone to bed." We ended up just hanging out at the cabin. Super low-key. I didn't say anything. She kept talking. Something about playing card games, how someone spilled a drink on the rug, how they laughed for 10 minutes straight over nothing. Her voice had this forced brightness to it, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. I was listening, but my eyes were drawn to the side of her neck. A faint smudge, small, barely noticeable in the soft yellow light of the kitchen, just below her jawline. Lipstick, but not her shade. Emily never wore lipstick like that. Too dark, too bold. She stuck to neutrals, subtle tones, stuff that looked like nothing at all. This was different, almost wine-colored, and it looked like it had been pressed there accidentally. Quick kiss, a graze, an imprint. I leaned against the counter, trying not to let my brain go too far, too fast. She opened the cabinet and grabbed a glass, but paused when she noticed the one already in the sink. "Did you have wine?" she asked. I shook my head. She tilted her head. Maybe one of the girls rinsed it and forgot to wash it. It was such a throwaway comment. Careless, even. But something in the way she said it made me walk over. The glass was half rinsed, as if someone had started to clean it and got distracted. Inside, a ring of deep red wine. Merlot or Pinot. On the rim, 2 lipstick marks. 2 distinct shades. One barely there, pink and faint. The other bold. That same deep tone I'd just seen on her neck. 2 layers. 2 people. Emily looked over, noticed me staring, and followed my gaze. She froze for a heartbeat, then smiled. "God, you're being weird," she said, like it was nothing. "It's just wine. You're acting like you found a body in there." I turned to face her fully. "Who was here?" Her smile faltered for just a second. A blink. Then it was back. "What are you talking about? I told you we stayed in. Me, Kate, Lila, And Jess. Same crew. I nodded slowly. Right? She stepped closer, trying to disarm me again, that playful tilt in her voice returning. Are you seriously jealous of a glass of wine? I didn't answer. Babe, she laughed. Oh my God. You're imagining things. That's when she leaned in, like she was gonna kiss me. Her breath smelled like mint, not wine. Her lips were bare now. Stop being weird, she whispered, smiling, and kissed me lightly on the cheek. But it felt hollow. And as she walked away toward the bathroom, something heavy settled in my chest. I stood there staring at that wine glass, thinking about the stories people tell to get themselves out of corners. Thinking about how practiced her voice sounded. The way she hadn't offered a single photo or text from the night. No names. No laughs. Just a vague summary. And that scent, God, that scent. It wasn't just cologne. It was presence. It was someone else. Someone close. Maybe she thought I'd let it slide. Maybe she thought I'd rather live in denial than ask hard questions. And a month ago, maybe she would have been right. But tonight, something cracked. Not loud. Not sudden. Just a clean, internal break. Like glass under pressure. She didn't know it yet. But the version of me she came home to wasn't the same one who kissed her goodbye yesterday morning. That man had waited up, hoping to hear a silly story about too much sangria and group selfies. This man just stared at a wine glass, thinking about the lies people pour into each other when they think no one's listening. It's strange how fast your brain rewrites the past once something breaks. Like flipping through a photo album you've seen 100 times, only now the pictures are different. Tilted. After that night at the cabin, I couldn't stop reviewing things in my head. Not just what happened that weekend, but all the little moments leading up to it. The jokes that didn't land. The pauses in her sentences. The glances at her phone she thought I didn't catch. The first real fracture, I think, happened months earlier. We were sitting at this cafe near her office, something we used to do on Wednesdays. A ritual. Half an hour of coffee and banter before work pulled us in opposite directions. That morning, she kept checking her phone. Everything okay? I'd asked, halfway through a story about something dumb my coworker had said. She looked up like she'd forgotten I was even there. Yeah, sorry. It's just work stuff. Deadlines, you know. She flipped the phone face down and smiled like I was supposed to be reassured. But her hand stayed on it the entire time. Thumb brushing against the edge like she was waiting for it to vibrate again. Back then, I brushed it off. You don't want to be suspicious when there's no smoking G***N. Nobody wants to become the insecure partner. So you rewrite the story. She's tired. She's busy. She just needs space. But once that doubt plants itself, it doesn't die. It mutates. Becomes a lens you can't take off. Like how she started taking her phone with her everywhere. To the bathroom. To the laundry room. To the balcony. That wasn't normal. She used to leave it on the counter for hours. Screen lighting up with texts from her sister or dumb Instagram reels from coworkers. But suddenly, it was always in her pocket. Or clutched in her hand. I asked once, just once, who she was texting so late. She blinked. Nobody. Just the group chat. What group chat? You don't know them, she said. It's just boring stuff. I nodded. Said nothing. Let it go. But it didn't let me go. The night we got back from the cabin, she fell asleep immediately. Didn't shower. Didn't even plug in her phone. Just crawled into bed and passed out. Like she'd hit a wall. I stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling. My brain felt like it was on fire. Something had shifted. I could feel it in her silence. In how she had stopped reaching for my hand during car rides. In how she barely looked up when I entered a room now. And still, I wanted to believe it was fixable. Stupid, maybe, but that's where I was back then. Halfway between instinct and denial. My heart wasn't ready to catch up to my gut. So I tested her. Quietly. One night, I asked her if she wanted to come with me to dinner with my sister and her fiancé. We'd been planning it for weeks. She hesitated. I have a work meeting that night, she said, avoiding my eyes. I thought I told you? You didn't. Well, it came up last minute. I can't cancel. I shrugged like I didn't care, but I did. Later that night, while she was brushing her teeth, I checked the shared calendar app we used. Nothing scheduled. No meeting. No note. Just a blank space where honesty should have been. The next morning, I brought it up again. "You sure about that meeting?" I asked. She blinked. "Yeah, why?" "No reason," I said. "Just thought it was weird you didn't put it in the calendar." "Oh, right. I guess I forgot." But she was too quick. Too polished. It was the kind of lie you could only pull off if you'd practiced. I started noticing more like that. New clothes she didn't mention buying. A leather jacket she'd never pick for herself. Not her style. A scent I'd never smelled on her before. When I asked, she said it was a gift from her coworker. "Everyone at the office got one," she claimed. She wore it 3 days in a row. And music. That was another thing. She used to hate indie folk music. Said it all sounded the same. "Sad guys with beards whining about trees," she once joked. But suddenly, her Spotify playlist was full of exactly that. Songs she used to skip when I played them in the car were now favorites. She played them on repeat. Even sang along to the lyrics she once rolled her eyes at. I didn't say anything, but I started writing things down. Dates, times, the lies. Not because I planned to confront her, not yet, but because I needed to know I wasn't imagining it. I needed proof for myself. Because when someone you love starts gaslighting you, the first thing that slips isn't trust. It's memory. You start questioning your own reality. Did she really say that? Did I just forget? Am I overreacting? One afternoon, I came home early from work. She wasn't expecting me. Her car was in the driveway, so I walked in through the garage. The house was quiet. Her laptop was open on the kitchen island. I didn't touch it, but I saw the last page she'd been on. A boutique hotel. Reservation page half filled out. A 2-night stay for 2, booked for the following weekend. She didn't mention any trip. When she heard me walk in, she snapped the laptop shut and smiled like everything was normal. Said she was just checking prices for her friend's bridal shower in a few months. "Trying to be helpful," she added. I nodded. "Cool. You're thoughtful like that." I watched her closely. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. But her hand, the one holding the coffee mug, was trembling slightly. That weekend, she said she needed space. That she was feeling crowded lately. She was going to take a day to drive up to Estes Park. Said she needed to clear her head. Think about some things. Alone. I told her I understood. Said I'd stay home, maybe tackle the garage. She kissed me on the forehead. I watched her pack a weekend bag. Not a day bag, and slip it quietly into the trunk. Later that afternoon, I checked the hotel's site again. The reservation was no longer on the homepage, but I recognized the name. It was the same place she had bookmarked the week before. Same suite number. I didn't say anything that night when she called and said she'd lost signal for a few hours. Didn't say anything when she texted, "Going to sleep early? Love you," at 9:47 p.m. And then showed as active on Instagram until 1:30 in the morning. But I ***ed it. By now, I wasn't waiting for a confession. I was collecting patterns. I started waking up in the middle of the night and checking the closet. Her clothes had changed. She was dressing for someone, but it wasn't me. More makeup, a new purse, a pair of boots that had never touched our hallway before. And the ***X? When it happened, it was different. Less frequent. Colder. She flinched when I touched her sometimes. Like I was an interruption instead of someone she once used to reach for in the dark. I remember one night after dinner, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie we'd both seen a dozen times. She got a text. Her phone lit up. She smiled barely, then flipped it face down again. I said, "Who's that?" She said, "Just Lila." I nodded. Then she got up, went to the bathroom, and stayed there for 15 minutes. When she came back, she didn't meet my eyes. Later, I checked the lock history on our smart front door. She'd come home at 2:03 a.m. The week before. She told me it was around midnight. But the log didn't lie. And that night when she came back from the cabin, I checked again. There was a 1-hour gap. Between 12:18 and 1:27 a.m. I asked her the next day what they did before she drove home. She said they just stayed up chatting, drinking chamomile tea, talking about college memories. I nodded. Anything funny happen? I asked. She paused, then smiled. Not really, just girl stuff. You wouldn't get it. But I wasn't looking for stories. I was listening for what wasn't being said. Because the thing about lying is, over time, it gets too clean, too easy. And the truth? The truth always leaves a mess. It had been 2 weeks since the wine glass. 2 weeks since the smudge of lipstick that wasn't hers. 2 weeks of silence masquerading as peace. Emily acted like nothing had happened. Like that night never existed. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still asked if I wanted anything when she went grocery shopping. She even started making coffee again. Like we were good. Like all I needed was caffeine and small talk. But everything she said felt scripted. Polished. She was choosing her words too carefully. Smiling too often. Complimenting me in ways that didn't match the rhythm of her voice. She was playing a part. And I was done pretending I couldn't see it. That's when she mentioned the next girls' weekend. She brought it up while we were folding laundry. A deliberate choice, I think. Casual setting. Distraction in hand. By the way, she said, matching a pair of socks that definitely weren't mine. Kate wants to do another cabin weekend. This time just one night. You cool with that? Sure, I said, folding a t-shirt. She kept her tone light. Same place. Just something quick before the wedding chaos starts. I nodded, eyes on the shirt. She watched me for a second too long, like she was trying to measure the shape of my silence. I didn't ask who was going. I didn't ask when they planned to leave. I didn't even ask why this trip was necessary when they had already done one 2 weeks ago. I just said, drive safe. That Friday, she packed even lighter. 1 bag. Her hair already done. Nails freshly painted. Berg *NDY. Deep. Dramatic. She didn't wear polish like that unless it was for something specific. Something curated. She kissed me goodbye in the doorway and smiled too hard. You okay? She asked, tilting her head. Yeah, I said. Just tired. She studied me for a second, then nodded. I'll text you when I get there. I watched her drive off through the blinds. Her taillights vanished down the road. 10 minutes later, I followed. Not because I wanted drama. Not because I was looking to catch her in the act. I just needed the truth. Clean. Cold. Unfiltered. She'd said they were going to the same cabin as before, so I knew the way. I didn't follow closely, I gave her a wide lead. Enough distance that she wouldn't notice me at all. I turned off my lights on curves. Kept my speed slow. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my chest felt like it was full of static. Halfway there, her location stopped updating. Just like last time. I already knew what that meant. The house was tucked off a private road, behind a line of bare aspens. Quiet. Modern. A glass and wood structure designed to look like it belonged there. Like it had grown out of the mountainside. When I pulled up, there was only one car in the driveway. Not hers. Not Kate's. Not Lila's. Not Jess's. A dark gray sports sedan. New. Polished. Sleek. The kind of car a man buys when he wants to feel important. I parked down the road, far enough to stay hidden. K** led the engine. Sat there. I could hear faint music from inside the house. Not loud, just a hum. Jazz maybe. Or lo-fi. Something int** mate. Something you'd play with the lights low and the curtains half drawn. I got out and walked slowly along the tree line, cutting through the back where the house opened up into a wide terrace. The design was all glass, floor-to-ceiling windows, barely any curtains. Whoever built it must have wanted to feel like there were no barriers between them and the world. And that's when I saw her, Emily, on the couch. She was barefoot, legs tucked under her, a glass of wine in her hand. She was laughing. Full, unguarded. The kind of laugh she hadn't shared with me in months. Next to her was a man. He was older than me. Athletic. Dressed like he wasn't trying, which meant he definitely was. Button-down rolled to his elbows, his hand resting casually, int** mately, on her thigh. She leaned into him. Not like she was drunk. Not like she was flirty. Like she belonged there. I stood completely still, hidden by the trees, heart hammering in my ears. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a slip-up. This wasn't a moment. It was a scene. A memory they'd rehearsed before. The way she smiled at him. The way he touched her without asking. The comfort between them. It had weight. History. She hadn't just cheated. She had built something. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been 10 seconds or 10 minutes. Time went strange. Like my body was trying to eject me from the moment. Eventually, he leaned in and whispered something to her. She nodded, smiled again, sipped her wine, put her hand on his knee. I turned around and walked away. Quietly. I didn't knock. I didn't text. I didn't call her name. I didn't cause a scene. Because I knew if I stayed another second, I'd either collapse or explode. And either option felt like handing her more of me, more than she had already taken. On the drive back, I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought I would. I thought the kind of heartbreak I was feeling would have to come out somewhere. Through my eyes, my fists, my throat. But no. I just drove. One hand on the wheel. One on the gear shift. The mountains blurred behind me. At one point, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. I looked calm. But inside, I was burning through everything I thought was true. My marriage. My wife. My own memory. Everything she'd said in the last few months ran through me like static. Her jokes. Her deflections. The late nights. The scent on her clothes. The passwords she changed. The dead zones she kept claiming to be in. The glass in the sink. It had all been leading here. To this cabin. This night. That couch. That man. And her smile. That was the part one couldn't unsee. Not the touch. Not even the lie. It was the ease in her eyes. The way she looked when she thought I wasn't watching. Like she had finally taken off a mask she wore around me. And underneath it, she looked free. I got home a little after midnight. Didn't turn on the lights. Didn't pour a drink. Didn't sit down. I just stood in the middle of the living room, staring at nothing. The silence felt different now. It didn't feel like absence. Felt like truth. She had made her choice. And now I had to make mine. But I knew one thing as clearly as I knew my own name. I would never beg for someone who could smile like that with someone else. I didn't confront her. That was the first decision I made after the cabin. Not because I was scared. Not because I didn't have questions. But because I knew that whatever explanation she offered would be designed to soften the truth, not reveal it. Lies don't end when they're exposed, they evolve. So I chose silence. When I got home that night, I stood in the dark for a long time, listening to the house breathe, the ticking of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, familiar sounds that suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. I slept on the couch, not out of spite. I just didn't want to be in the bed where she'd practiced pretending. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. My body felt calm in a way my mind wasn't. Like something inside me had already accepted the ending before the rest of me caught up. Emily texted around 9:15 a.m. Made it their safe red heart no signal last night. Miss you. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I put my phone down. I didn't reply. That was the moment I disappeared, not physically, but internally. I went to work like normal, answered emails, sat in meetings, smiled at the right times. No one noticed. That's the thing about quiet exits. They don't announce themselves. That evening, I opened a new bank account during my lunch break. Different institution. No shared access. I redirected my paycheck. Changed the password on my personal email. Enabled two-factor authentication on everything that mattered. Documents first. Emotions later. At home, I moved slowly, carefully, like I didn't want the house to hear me. I pulled out a storage box from the closet and began filling it with the things that were unquestionably mine. Passport, birth certificate, old journals, the watch my father gave me. I didn't rush. I wasn't angry. Anger would have been louder. She came home 2 days later, acted like nothing had happened, kissed me hello, asked if I wanted Thai or Italian for dinner. Told me a story about Kate being so dramatic over wedding seating. I listened, nodded, asked follow-up questions. She didn't notice that I'd stopped touching her. That was the strange part. She didn't notice the absence of me, just the presence of routine. She filled the space with words, and I let her. Every night, I removed something else. A jacket, a book, pair of boots. One at a time. Slow enough not to trigger suspicion. She posted photos online. Smiling. Group sh*ts. Wine glasses clinking. Comments full of hearts and goals. I watched without reacting. Didn't like. Didn't scroll too long. Sometimes she tried to be affectionate. Slid her hand onto my thigh during a movie. Rested her head on my shoulder. But it felt rehearsed. Mechanical. Like she was checking a box. I didn't pull away. I just didn't lean in. That confused her more than anger ever could. One night, she asked, "Are we okay?" I looked at her and said, "Yeah, just tired." She accepted that answer too easily. By the end of the week, I disconnected my card from all shared subscriptions. Streaming services, grocery delivery, ride-sharing. She never mentioned it. Just re-added hers. I found a small apartment across town. Signed the lease digitally. Scheduled the move for a weekday morning when she'd be at work. No drama. No witnesses. The night before, she slept beside me. Breathing slow. Peaceful. I stared at the ceiling and felt nothing. No rage. No sadness. Just distance. In the morning, I kissed her on the forehead before she left. She smiled. "Love you." I said, "Drive safe." When the movers arrived, I didn't look back. By noon, half of my life was gone from that house, and she still didn't know. Silence isn't passive. It's deliberate. And by the time she noticed the echo, I was already gone. I didn't want revenge. Not at first. What I wanted was clarity. The kind of truth that doesn't hide behind text messages or dim lighting or lipstick smudged just low enough to deny. But clarity doesn't always come from the person who owes it to you. Sometimes you have to go find it yourself. Sometimes the only way to know what's real is to ask the person standing behind the person who lied. And that's how I found her. His wife. I didn't know her name at first. All I had was a blurry mental picture from the cabin. The man in the sports shirt, the polished car in the driveway, the quiet confidence of someone who had done this before. But I had one tool Emily didn't think I'd use. Her Instagram archive. She'd posted a picture 6 months ago at a company Christmas party. One of those quick story clips where everyone's holding flutes of champagne and pretending to be effortlessly candid. In the background, out of focus, I saw him. Same hair, same jaw, laughing at something just out of frame, tagged by someone else. His name was Daniel. A few taps later, I found his profile. Private, of course, but not hers. His wife's, Laura. Her account was public. All smiling selfies and Pinterest-style dinner parties. Inspirational quotes and curated sunlight. Pictures of her and Daniel on vacation. Her and Daniel on their anniversary. Her and Daniel at the same cabin Emily said was a girls' only getaway. I scrolled until I found a tagged location, the cabin's rental page. She'd captioned it, "Our favorite escape." It was their place. Not just some random rental. It was something they returned to. Familiar. Int asterisk mate. That was when I knew. Emily hadn't just stumbled into something. She was trespassing in someone else's life. One that already had rules, rituals, consequences. I debated for 3 days before messaging Laura. I rewrote the first sentence 9 times. In the end, I kept it simple. "Hi Laura. I know this is hard to read, and I wouldn't send this unless I was sure. I believe my wife has been involved with your husband. I have some information. If you want to talk, I'm here." She didn't reply that night, or the next. I figured she wouldn't. Most people don't want their reality disturbed, even when it's already cracked. Sometimes especially then. But then, on the 3rd day, I got a message. I had a feeling. "Please tell me everything." We talked for over an hour. I didn't send **ts, not yet. I didn't need to. She already had her own doubts. Her own version of my timeline. She said Daniel had started traveling more for work. started leaving his phone on silent, started coming home smelling like wine he didn't drink and cologne she didn't buy. She said he'd been distant, restless, kept changing his passcode, canceled date nights, stopped touching her. I told her what I'd seen at the cabin. She told me he'd charged it to his corporate card. We started matching stories, times, dates, lies. Each puzzle piece clicked into place. Across 2 marriages, 2 people who'd never met before, watching the same wreckage from opposite windows. She said she had **TS, that she'd been too afraid to believe them at first. Messages he didn't know she'd seen. Flirtation at first. Then harmless inside jokes. Then plans. And then photos. From the cabin. Her cabin. Daniel had left his iCloud logged in on the family iPad. She hadn't meant to look. But it was there. Picture of Emily. Barefoot on the couch. Laughing. Same as the night I saw her. But this time from his angle. Close. Familiar. Like she belonged in the frame. Laura didn't cry. Not during the call. Not once. She was calm. Colder than I expected. Like someone who'd already grieved the person sleeping next to her. The next morning, she filed an internal complaint. Daniel worked for the same company as Emily. Different departments but same executive circle. Laura sent in documentation. **TS. Calendar overlaps. Expense reports flagged with unapproved travel and wine purchases that had nothing to do with business. He was called in that week. She didn't tell him why. She just let it happen. He was fired 3 days later. Violation of conduct, they said. Emily wasn't fired, but she was suspended. Her name vanished from the project she'd been talking about for months. The one she said was going to change everything. The one she told me had finally made her feel recognized. She tried to play it off when I asked. Said the company was restructuring. Said it wasn't personal. I nodded. Didn't mention Laura. Didn't mention the complaint. Didn't mention that I already knew she'd been flagged in the report. For the first time, she looked shaken. Off balance. She didn't know where the hit had come from. Because I hadn't made a sound. She still thought I was just the guy who disappeared. Still thought she controlled the story. But now the edges of her mask were slipping. The bright, curated version of herself was cracking. The social media posts stopped. Her smile, the one she wore so easily, the one she used like armor, started to look forced, strained. She was quieter at home, shorter-tempered, not with me, with herself. I watched her unravel slowly, like a thread that had been pulled too far. She stayed up later, drank more, started apologizing for small things she never would have noticed before. Sorry. I forgot to get the almond milk. Sorry. I didn't see your text. Sorry. I've just been distracted lately. I said, it's fine. And I meant it. Because by then, I'd stopped needing her to explain. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for a lifeline. But I wasn't offering one. What she didn't know was that her perfect life, the one she used to orbit around like the sun, had started to collapse from a place she couldn't see. Not because I shouted. Not because I exposed her. But because the other side of the lie had finally spoken. His message came late, desperate and short. Please stop. Emily's falling apart. I didn't respond. I wasn't out for revenge. I didn't need her punished. I just needed the truth to exist somewhere outside of me. I didn't blast it online. I didn't call her friends. I didn't speak a word. I simply let the truth echo, and it did. Quietly, permanently. She lost the job offers, the reputation, the admiration she once wore like perfume. And me? I moved into a new apartment. No photos, no souvenirs, no scent of her on the sheets. I didn't cry. I didn't chase. In the quiet, I finally felt still, whole, myself. 2 months later, she called, asking if I could pick her up from an office party. I said yes. I arrived early, waited in the car, engine off. At 9:20, she walked out, not alone. Daniel followed. She hugged him first. He kissed her cheek. They smiled like nothing had broken, like I hadn't ever existed. She never saw me. I drove off without a word. No confrontation. No closure. Just the final truth. She'd never stopped. And I had finally, truly let go. In that silence, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace.